Members, this is a meeting of the Council, which is being held remotely, and welcome to the Infrastructure and Inclusive Growth Committee. The meeting is being recorded and is streamed via YouTube, where members of the public are able to watch the meeting. The recording will be available on the Council's website following the meeting. Please note that any comments posted on the chat feed of the Council's YouTube channel during this recording will not be monitored by the Council. All members have been provided with a remote committee guidance note prior to the meeting, and please can these be adhered to during the meeting. This includes all mobile devices should be switched off or set to silent so the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. Please switch your profile to mute unless you are speaking. And if you wish to speak, please raise your hand in order so that I'm aware that you wish to speak. For each item, the officers will present the report and then committee will discuss it, after which, if there are any group leaders or deputy leaders present, they'll be asked if they have any comments to make before we vote on the recommendations. Thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies for absence. Yeah.
Thank you. No. Item number 2, any declarations of interest? Taking that as no declarations of interest. Thank you. Agenda item number 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of September 2020, which is on pages 3 to 10 of the agenda. If I could ask members to unmute themselves to vote on the minutes, please.
Sorry.
Councillor Rimmer.
I was just going to say that actually one comment on the minutes, which obviously can't be reflected, is it wasn't a very civilised meeting, and we didn't feel like we could voice our opinions and our views and deliberate on matters without interruption from the chair. But I don't expect that from this chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. That wasn't my experience of the meeting, but we'll now vote on the recommendations we'll now vote on the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of September. I vote in favour. Councillor Rimmer.
In favour.
Councillor Fellows.
Abstain.
Councillor Turner.
In favour.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, I agree with them.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
In favour.
Thank you. So with 5 votes in favour and 1 abstention, the minutes are carried. I will move the work programme update to after agenda item number 8, just in case there's any items that come up this evening that members would like to discuss on the work programme update. So item 4 will follow item 8. So we'll now go to agenda item number 5, the draft service budget 21-22 and capital programme, which is on pages 15 to 25 of your agenda. And I believe Mr. Larkman is presenting.
I'm going to do that for you, Chair.
Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you, Chair. So just to introduce myself, my name's Andrew Wilkes. I'm a management accountant. I'll just give you a brief overview of the contents of the report and then open it up for any queries. So this report provides information on the draft budgets relevant to this committee for the financial year 21-22 and the financial forecast 3 to 24-25. These have been set in accordance with the budget setting process and budget guidelines as approved by Policy and Resources on the 22nd of July 2020. The draft budget enclosure number 2 on page 23 of your agenda is the product of that following the process and guidelines. As explained within the body of the report, the financial forecast has been updated to reflect anticipated additional costs required to cover the emerging evidence-based refresh of the local plan and ensure there are sufficient resources available through the examination in public. The committee is asked to endorse these proposals for inclusion in the overall budget that will be presented to Policy and Resources Committee on the 28th of January 2021. Inclusion number 3 on page 25 of your agenda is a summary of financial performance up to Q2 this year. At Policy and Resources Committee in January, the strategy for managing the future overall financial position of the authority will be considered. And I would just take the opportunity to plug a series of briefings that we're currently holding to assist members in their understanding of some of the more technical aspects of the overall budget, covering such matters as treasury management, housing revenue account, reserves, and other subjects as well. So I would recommend them to members. That's pretty much it. Colleagues from relevant services are present, so collectively we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkes. And just in response to your plug for the briefings, thank you to you and your team for the work that you're doing and offering that to members. I'd now like to open it up to members for comment on the draft service budget. Is there any member that wishes to speak? Councillor Rimmer.
Yeah, it's just quite pithy. I'll say it in these times when people are struggling. I cannot be voting for a draft budget that assumes, even if it's the draft service budget, that assumes a 2% council tax increase. I think that's just very unfortunate indeed. So I will not be voting for this.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. We are voting on the draft service budget relating to this committee. Any other members?
But it has an underpinning assumption, so I'm voting on that basis. I think that's reasonable.
Councillor Rimmer, any other members that wish to come in? Councillor Turner.
So can I just ask the estimated, is that a shortfall of 300,000?
So is that on the financial performance for this year?
Yeah.
Is that what we're referring to?
Yeah.
So that's the predicted, what we're currently predicting as an underspend at the end of the year. That's for a budget that we provided for in this financial year. We're expecting that because of delays, that will be underspent, which we'll be looking to carry forward to next year to complete that work.
Okay, so what are those underspends currently?
Christine might be best placed to cover that. From my perspective, it's provisions that we just put in for the local plan, but Christine will probably support you on the specifics.
The underspends relate to the examination in public. Obviously, we have to pay for that, so there's a cost of that, and I mean that is it covers the cost of council, and we also have to pay for the planning inspector. Those costs can be around about £150,000, and also that is the a sum was given originally for the local plan, and Councillor Moore is obviously aware of this. And over time, we've spent against that, and this basically is the residue of that the money that was put aside for the local plan. It covers the local plan examination, additional evidence base that are required, and any other expenses that come from the local plan, additional consultation, and other work that will be required. So it's not money that we won't be using; it's just money we won't be using in this financial year.
But how do councillors know that it is a £300,000 spend that we haven't spent on the items that you've said? There's no line item summary here. I mean, you just said that the biggest cost there I picked out from when you were talking was 150,000. So you've got another 150,000 there for what? And I think this comes back to what Councillor Rimmer was saying. Just to give a carte blanche 2% increase, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And as councillors with the public purse, I think it's our job to scrutinise what officers are putting before us. And at the moment, we've got 2 lines on a piece of paper that says, this is what we're going to do. And by the way, we want to put a hand in the pocket of the resident for another 2%.
The original money for the local plan was set out in the original budgets that have been around since 2015, since all the budgets were put together for the local plan, and the money year on year has been carried forward for those overall costs. The costs that we're now at the end of the local plan process, so these costs are those that we know will need to be spent in next financial year to cover that cost. We either do one of 2 things. We take this money out of the budget at the end of this financial year and then we put it back in next financial year, or we carry this money forward, because the money will be needed to be spent on the local plan, however you want to marry whatever the budget lines look like. We have got expenditure for the local plan that need to be made available for us. Those relate to the examination in public, which will be the cost of a venue for the examination in public.
Please don't go back over that. I heard it.
Sorry, Councillor Turner. Ms. Lyons is explaining the point there. If you could just
with respect, Chairman, I think the point is being missed. You know, I understand.
Councillor Turner, if we could just let Ms. Lyons speak, you'll be allowed to come back in. If we could just let Ms. Lyons finish.
It's just a repeat, Chairman, of what I've heard already.
If you could just let Ms. Lyons finish speaking, you will be allowed to come back in. Sorry, Ms. Lyons.
That's all right. I mean, the cost will be covering for the examination, which is the inspector, the venue, the cost of council, and then also additional evidence bases for additional work that's required for the local plan, and also the ongoing consultation that will be required for any major modifications to the local plan. So the sum is needed for us to adopt that local plan. If we haven't got it in the budget this year, it will have to be found for next year. So the £341,000 we're carrying forward will cover that work. Otherwise, we'll just have to find it again from the budget that we'll have to create going forward through if we lost that this year, we'd still have to find it for next year. So I don't see there's an issue with it at the moment. We're not asking for additional money. We're just carrying the money forward.
Thanks, Ms. Lyons. And just in relation to the point that was made around asking councillors having an update of where we're at, on page 25, we do have that estimated variance and that carryover for next year. This is very similar to the position of the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee budget that was put forward 2 years ago under my predecessor, Bar 1, Councillor Moore, and the explanation being provided by Ms. Lyons. So I don't see any need for the point of view making Councillor Turner, but do you wish to come back in?
Yeah, I do. And Chairman, you're missing the point. And listen, part of the function of this committee is to scrutinise. 2 lines on a piece of paper on page 25 is not scrutiny. And what I'm suggesting was in previous items, previous administrations, not this one, in previous administrations, we've held officers to account and scrutinised what they're actually asking to carry forward. Now, with respect, Chairman, I don't think you are wise enough to look on that piece of paper and tell me or anybody else that it's absolutely essential that we carry that 341,000 forward. And what I'm suggesting is we need to be more open and transparent with what our budgets are carrying. You know, what you're asking us to do here is another rubber stamp exercise. We get a report that is thin on everything. We get an update, another verbal update on, why it's absolutely essential that we need to take this forward. And we don't know. With respect, we do not know. Now, okay, you can say, yeah, what does it matter? Officers have asked for it. We'll just go and do it. But at the end of this is a 2.5% increase. Well, 2.5% increase on the 600,000 budget. We might be able to find that with a bit of scrutiny on the money that hasn't been spent. But we're not being given any details to do that. So what is the point of this report? I just find it incredible that we can skip over public purse money at a whim. And, none of us know how we're going to spend that money, what it's going to be spent on. We've got, in principle, we've got some big items there, but, we just don't know. Hand on heart, we don't know. So I think Councillor Rimmer's right at the end of it, asking to put 2% increase on a budget where we're not even sure where it's going to come out or what we've spent or what we're not going to spend. I think we're not doing the residents any real good, and that's what we're elected for.
Councillor Turner, any other member that wishes to speak on this item? Okay, we will now proceed to vote on the recommendation that the proposals for the revenue budgets as set out in enclosure number 2, relevant to this committee for 21-22 and the financial forecast to 24-25, be endorsed for inclusion in the overall budget to be presented to Policy and Resources Committee on the 28th of January 2021. And recommendation number 2, that the forecast outturn position for 2020-21 be noted. I'll take both recommendations en bloc. I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Fellows.
In favour, Chair.
Councillor Rimmer.
Against.
Councillor Turner.
Yeah, definitely against.
Councillor Reid.
In favour.
Councillor Moore.
Against.
That is 3 votes in favour, 3 against. With my casting vote, that is carried. So we now go on to agenda item number 6, the growth provision for education, pages 27 to page 90 of your agenda this evening. Just before I invite the officers to speak, this is a report that I've asked officers to prepare. I think when we look at any development that takes place, I always think we should have at the forefront of our mind the education needs for young people across the borough. So this is the reason for this item coming before us. So I'll invite Mr. Bilo to address the committee.
Good afternoon, councillors. I was going to present this item.
Apologies.
My name is Lisa Richardson. I'm a senior planner in the Planning Strategy and Implementation team. If you bear with me a moment, I'm just going to share a presentation on this screen. Hopefully. Can I just confirm everyone can see the presentation? Thank you. This report sets out the Section 106 contributions being collected towards education, early years and childcare. It also sets out the proposal to deliver new and expanded education provision to meet the proposed growth in our borough. A Section 106 agreement is a legal agreement which sets out the delivery mechanism for infrastructure required to mitigate the impact of a development. Currently, Essex County Council, as the local education authority, holds a little over 3.3 million in Section 106 contributions towards education, early years and childcare provision. They can expect to receive from development which has already been consented just under 4.8 million, and they have so far used or committed for use on advanced developed projects at just over £4 million. This is set out in detail in enclosure 2 of your report. In regards to the Section 106 contributions that have been used so far, these are the schools which have either been expanded or have proposals to expand them in the immediate future. So principally Marylands, Gilgrove, Phoenix, Whitmore, Ranwell and Brightside primary schools. Beauchamps High School and expanded early years and childcare provision to serve the Wickford area. So these have been funded through Section 106 contributions. Again, enclosure 2 does set out precisely which developments funded. But for example, Gilgrove Primary School received Section 106 contributions from Beechwood Village, and Phoenix Primary School from Dunton Fields and Ballard's Walk developments. The contribution, Essex County Council sets out how the contributions should be collected, and they set out a formula based on the type of development. So for 1-bedroom development and certain specialist forms such as older people's housing, there's no contribution expected. The most significant contribution comes from houses, with flats of 2 or more bedrooms expected to make half as much contribution as a house. So, for example, a development with 100 houses would be expected to generate 9 early years places, 30 primary school places and 20 secondary school places. Currently, the Essex Developer Guide for contributions was updated very recently, and the most recent figures they've given us is for an early years place, it would cost approximately £30,127. For a primary school place, around £17,268 for expansion, rising to £20,508 for a new primary school. And for every secondary school place, around £23,775 for expansion and £24,929 for a new secondary school. There are a number of figures in the report which indicate the estimated cost for the proposed schools planned by the local draft local plan. As you'll see from the report, unfortunately, those are priced at the April 2019 figures. Unfortunately, the updated Essex Developer Contribution Guide was only adopted a couple of days before this report needed to be published for committee. Therefore, we are currently engaging with Essex County Council to update the costs related to the development plan for the local plan. Specifically, specific provision for the borough in Billericay, as mentioned already, there has been an expansion of Brightside Primary School. There is also a requirement for a 1 form entry expansion of an existing school. So by 1 form entry, that would be 30 places into each year of a primary school, so 210 places in total. And there is a need for a new school and an associated early years and childcare provision to serve the local plan allocation H17, which is southwest Billericay. For Wickford, there would also be a need for a minimum of 1 form expansion of existing provision. and an additional new school and its associated early years and childcare provision on H12, land south of Wickford. For Basildon, Rydeen Primary has recently had a one-form expansion completed, though not funded through Section 106 contributions. There's also been identified a need to expand Vange Primary, which is unusually small for the borough, only 0.5 forms of entry. So that would be expanded by 1.5 forms of entry. Northlands Primary is expected to be expanded in 2022-2023. And there is additional need for capacity at Notebridge area, which we are engaging with Essex County Council to identify how that could be supplied. A new school is planned for Dry Street, and that is currently estimated to be in 2024-25. There is also expectations that a new school and the early years and childcare provision would be provided on site H5, Gardeners Lane South, and increased nursery provision on H10, which is land east of Notebridge. Finally, we have Pitsy and Bowers Gifford by Essex County Council is dealt with separately to Basildon, and that's identified a need for a new school and the early years and childcare provision on H11, which is east of Basildon, as well as another new school to be provided as part of the Bowers Gifford and North Benfleet neighbourhood plan. For secondary schools, currently Billericay and Wickford both have a significant proportion of the pupils attending the schools in those areas who live outside of the emissions area. So it is anticipated that any planned growth in Billericay and Wickford can predominantly be managed within the existing secondary schools. However, we've not ruled out the possibility that may be some limited expansion needed. Basildon currently has surplus secondary school places, mainly as a result of for parental choice to not send children to their local school. So we do need to work with Essex County Council to improve the standards in the local secondary schools in Basildon. However, there is also a need in future. I've just had interference on my microphone. Can I just confirm everyone can hear me properly? Yes, thank you. There is also a future need for a new secondary school within the borough, and that's anticipated to be as part of H11 east of Basildon. I'm hoping this map is visible to people on the relatively small Zoom screen, but it just shows a very general idea of the distribution of the schools. So our green stars represent new primary schools, whereas the red star here represents the new secondary school proposed. In respect of specialist educational need provision, we can't apply a formula in the same way we apply to mainstream provision because needs are specific to what the specialist educational need is. Needs could be met through a mainstream school with additional support, or through a specially resourced provision within a mainstream school. And at the moment, we have this provision at Marylands for primary school age and at Bromford School for secondary school age. Alternatively, it could be a specific specialist school, which is considered to be a regional centre of excellence for that particular need. And in the borough, we currently have Castledon and Pioneer schools, both of which admit from age 5 through to age 19. Some children do travel outside to other schools within the county, but again, this is about attending the best school that's able to meet their particular specialist individual need. As I've referred to earlier, we can't apply a formula, but as a general idea of scale, about 3.4% of children in education have an education, health and care plan. And out of them, 2.1% attend a mainstream provision and 1.3% attend a specialist school. So at the moment, the level of growth planned for in the borough is not expected to generate the need for a new specialist school, though this will continuously be kept under review. Post-16 education and training is funded differently by a national funding framework rather than by developer contributions. There is an expectation that South Essex College will hopefully open in January 2021. We would also be looking to extend a number of projects, including the South Essex Construction Training Academy and of the Advice Store. And we would be looking through development to secure in-kind contributions via employment and skills plans. So, for example, apprenticeships arising from the development. Next steps on this, our most recent change has been the adoption of the town centre regeneration vision, which significantly increases the amount of residential development planned for the town centre. So we're currently engaging with Essex County Council to identify what the educational needs arising from that are and how they could be met. I'd refer back to the table we talked about earlier, though those are very high numbers. The majority of the development is anticipated to be flats with a high proportion of one-bedroom units. So the educational need is not expected to necessarily be as high as the raw numbers might make you think. But we are working with Essex County Council to identify, firstly, if that need can be met through expansion of the existing school estate, and if not, how it could be met in the future. Though Essex County Council is the local education authority, we have a number of schools which are operated by academy trusts. So we are engaging with the academy trusts and with the heads of schools to identify what their ambitions for expansion are in the future and how we can support that. And overall, we're continuing to work with Essex County Council and with education providers on how we can address sustainable school growth, which both meets the current and immediate needs of the borough without compromising the ability to meet the long-term needs. As referred to, this is a position report. There are no recommendations to vote on, but I'm happy to take any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Before I come to Councillor Fellows and Councillor Rimmer, just a couple of points from me. First of all, thank you for presenting that report this evening. I think that's a really useful insight for all members. Just on your last point of the report being for noting, I am actually going to propose an alteration to the recommendation because I do think there is a piece of work for this council to do and this committee. So I'd like the recommendation to read that the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee note the report and the outcome of the engagement with Essex County Council and relevant schools would be brought to a future committee meeting. And I'll put that to the committee when we come to that, when we come to vote on the recommendation. I'd also just like to put a point on, there were 6 questions that were raised in the future engagement with stakeholders. One of the things for me that I think we need to consider is the needs of post-16 education. There's rightly lots of focus on primary and secondary education, but at some point, those individuals and those young people are going to need and want to go on to post-16 education. And I think that's a real thing that we need to consider and look at what the landscape is for post-16 education within the borough. So I'll leave that there and I'll invite Councillor Fellows to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, although on education I could take up the rest of the evening, but I will be brief. A comment, I've made it for the last 20 years. I'm very disappointed that West Basildon is still being overlooked in terms of provision of a secondary school. There simply isn't one within striking distance of local parents. And we, because I live in West Basildon, for the last 20 years plus that I know of, we've been sending our children to all parts of the borough, to the Beauchamps, to the Whitford schools, to the Bideriffy schools and further afield. And again, you know, as I say, it's been overlooked, West Basildon, but it's noted that there is a surplus of secondary schools in Basildon. Now, I have my own views of this, and I've held those for many years. Could I ask the officer where those surplus places are, and do we know the reason why? You're on mute.
Sorry.
Lisa, are you able to answer?
Yes, specifically we'd have to engage a little more with Essex County Council, though I understand schools that have been particularly mentioned are Upper and Lower Academy. Mm-hmm. In regarding the issue of West Basildon, Essex County Council didn't identify a need for us, and in particular the allocation in H8 in West Basildon is around 300 homes. So its need would only be about 60 places would generate from that. Essex County Council has identified there is potential for a secondary school to be delivered as part of Dunton Garden Village, which could potentially also serve West Basildon. Obviously, this is a matter that is under the control of the Essex County Council as the local education authority. But we can certainly take that back to our discussions with them.
Okay, if we just come back on that one comment. We're all saying how proud we are of Basildon, and I think it's a shame that we're relying on Brentwood to provide secondary school places in West Basildon. But I won't pin you on that because it's beyond, you know, our remit of this panel. Have we? Oh no, sorry, you did answer in the committee. Okay, Chairman, thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask, in respect to faith schools and the part they play in this equation. I understand in Gifford there's a good faith primary school there. Is that being considered as part of the mix when looking at how places could be configured?
My understanding from Essex County Council, they do consider all places. A particular challenge they do have with faith schools is the admission isn't based on local residency. So a child from significantly out of the area could receive a offer in preference to a child that lives in close proximity to the school. So that is a challenge for them in managing admissions to the school and ensuring children can access education locally. However, they do take account of all schools in the area.
Thank you for. Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. I was just going to go on the special education's need. It was an interesting point that you raised. I sort of noticed with that, and maybe it's my misinterpretation, so you can clarify for me, but it didn't seem like there was much special education need provision in Pitsy in particular. But actually, most of it was in either Billericay or Wickford or Central Basildon. I think my fellow Councillor Fellows would probably say there wasn't anything in Langdon or West Basildon either. So if you could unpack that for me, that would be great.
Again, obviously, we can't speak for the Education Authority. The main challenge I understand is they need to, there's a relatively small amount of need. So you have to deliver the specialist need in a small number of schools. The main source of supporting that educational need is by provision in a mainstream setting. So for example, a child attending a school in those areas might have a one-to-one teaching assistant supporting them to access education in a mainstream provision. But if there is a need for a specialist unit or a specialist school, only a limited number of them can be provided.
So if I could just come in there just before I invite you back in, Craig, Councillor Rimmer, if that's all right. But I think just one of the reasons why we're bringing this report tonight is to understand members' views and thoughts so that we can go away and carry out that consultation, yes, and bring it back to a future meeting. So thanks for raising these points. Councillor Rimmer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Senior Planner. It's just obviously, I'm surprised a little bit by the figures that are being reported, and just from a lay perspective, because we are being told that more autism and neurodiversity is actually being identified amongst our younger people and in education, and I'm just surprised that there isn't a greater demand being factored in. So if those questions could be raised and whether there is a need for more provision in Pitsy, I think that would be a good idea.
We have recently raised both post-16 and special educational needs with Essex County Council with updating the position with them. We're expecting to receive a response to that mid to late December, so we can certainly bring that back to future committees.
Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Yeah, well, good work on starting on this, because I think it's going to be a real problem when we get going with the local plan over the next 20 odd years. I just want to pick up on a couple of points that were touched on. First of all, the provision in West Basildon, and Councillor Fellows mentioned it. Under the local plan, under my administration, we had a provision in there for our side of Dunton to have a school. That seems to have been washed out. I mean, poor old Councillor Fellows there, his party voted against the local plan and took it out. But had he have stuck with it, we'd have had it closer to delivery by now. But the problem is going to be this. When you start rolling out the housing, you say about Billericay, let's start there. At the moment, a large provision of that is met by, or space is met by people coming up the hill from Basildon. Now, once you get housing in Billericay starting to be developed, that's going to push people back down the hill. And we're talking about provision here on the housing that's coming forward, but that's going to basically overflow some of what is already there available and what you're proposing here. I'm not sure that has actually been built into the into your calculations. And then you take Brentwood's part of West Basildon development, and they're going to have somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 houses. Be more like 6,000, might even be 8. So any secondary school in there, that the demand there is going to be pretty high anyway. So I'm not an expert, and hopefully experts aren't looking at this, but to my simple mind, I'm thinking that you're going to push people back from Billericay that are currently using it. So no provision there other than what's going to be met by the additional housing in Billericay. Brentwood's going to be built to cater for the development that they've got going in their part of Dunton Hills. And then you've got this need then for people in Councillor Fellows' part of the world. And I just wonder whether or not that's been taken into these calculations. I fear not.
We have had that discussion with Essex County Council, and I understand from them that they have taken into account the expected movement away from Billericay and Wickford schools for Basildon residents. And that's what's identified the need for the additional provision to come forward in H11 of a new secondary school in Basildon, whereas there isn't a need for a new secondary school in Billericay or Wickford. Certainly we can try to bring more detail back from them on how they've looked into that at a future committee, but it is my understanding that has been taken into account.
That would be good, because I can, from what you've said here, I think you're looking exactly right around the borough for that extra provision. But this one area, I just think, I mean, we didn't go into it in spades, but you don't need to if you start thinking about the migration every morning up to Brentwood and Mayflower, and say if you're then bottling that in with Brentwood and you've got this, there's no provision being brought on tap in West Basildon, I think we could be looking at a serious issue there. I think it will be.
So we'll revisit the issue of West Basildon specifically with Essex County Council.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Turner, any other members that wish to speak on this item? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Again, talking about the surplus of secondary school places, and I know that obviously education comes under Essex County Council.
Currently.
And it's been pointed or asked why we have a surplus. I mean, some of my casework is to do with education, and it is parents who want their children to go to a school where they can get the best academic achievement. And so, the reason we have got a surplus in some of the schools is simply because they're just not as good as other schools, and obviously that's a disadvantage to a lot of the children and students in the deprived areas in our borough. And the other thing is on the special educational needs. Often the the special educational needs schools are based on how many children have the EHC plan. They are extremely difficult and takes a long time to get those in place. And I feel, reading through the report, there doesn't seem to be a lot of these plans in the Basildon Borough. And a lot of that is what the special education needs are based on, how many children have these plans. And because it takes such a long time for parents actually to get these in place, I feel that a lot of the children are at a disadvantage, and they're struggling in a mainstream school rather than attending a special needs school. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Any other members that wish to come in? Councillor Fellows?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. If I can just come back, and it's really picking up on the point that Councillor Turner was making as well. It's all very well for Essex to say, oh yeah, you know, the 300 homes at in Dunton is going to produce another 60 kids. But hey, you're looking at a person here, lived in West Basildon for just under 31 years, and I had 2 children. And my neighbours and everybody around here has been the same. So it's the current population that have always been overlooked, not just the 60 new children coming in with the West Basildon 300 houses. I just want that bit to take on board because it's very, very relevant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. Councillor Rimmer.
I just thought Councillor Reid made a very good last point there about the EHC plans. And I've heard from people who've actually had with their children difficulty getting those plans and then eventually just being totally overlooked, actually having issues, but not having a plan in place. And I think the explanation that Councillor Reid has just given for those numbers about the figures, that it might be reflected on the EHC plan, suggests we definitely should look at this and see if there's a figure that's more realistic and actually reflects better what's actually happening on the ground. And I mean, no, it's a big ask to see if we can get to make it, but maybe if we are providing more places, then it will be easier for them to get the EHC plans.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. I want to thank members for their contributions on this item tonight. I'm sure I speak for everybody when I say that we want the best possible education for our young people in this borough, and we want to take a really proactive approach to making sure that our school needs have been met, but also met for the future as well. So thanks to all members for their contributions. So I'll work with officers following this meeting to add those points to the future engagement with stakeholders. So I'll now proceed to the recommendation. Kemi, could you advise whether I need a seconder on my addition to the recommendations? Sorry, Kemi, you're on mute.
Sorry, if members agree, yeah.
Yeah, so sorry, do I need a seconder to put that to the recommendation?
If all members are in agreement, it can be voted on.
No worries, I'm not detecting any members disagreeing with that recommendation to bring to future consultation, to bring that to a future committee. Councillor Fellows?
Chair, if we need a seconder, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, just as a point of policy, I think if you're going to make an amendment, it's much clearer and concise for everybody if you put it forward as a proposal and get it voted on, and then everybody knows and is clear exactly what you're saying.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I was seeking clarification on whether it was an amendment or whether it was just an alteration to the recommendation. But I will put to the vote that we amend the recommendation on page 27 that Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee note the report and the outcome of the engagement with Essex County Council and relevant stakeholders would be brought to a future committee meeting. I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Fellows?
I'm in favour.
Councillor Rimmer?
Favour.
Councillor Reid?
In favour.
Councillor Turner?
In favour.
Councillor Moore?
In favour.
Thank you. As that has been carried, Kelly, could you advise whether we need to vote again on the full recommendation or whether that's just...
Yes, please.
Vote again, yeah. So we will now vote on the full recommendation that the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee note the report and the outcome of the engagement with Essex County Council and relevant schools will be brought to a future committee meeting. I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Rimmer.
In favour.
Councillor Fellows.
In favour.
Councillor Moore.
In favour.
Councillor Reid.
In favour.
Councillor Turner.
In favour.
Thank you. We will now proceed on to agenda item number 7, Basildon Borough Walking and Cycling Infrastructure Plan, which is on pages 91 to 114 of your reports. Before I invite Miss Awolowo to address the committee this evening and present the report, if I could just ask that there was an email sent around this evening with additional points and route maps being provided on the cycling infrastructure plan. If we could just address those in the presentation, please, that'd be great. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. If you just permit me, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Thank you. The report before you tonight is to consider the local walking and cycling infrastructure plan, which I will refer to as the HELSI going forward. The HELSI represents a shared ambition with the central government to make walking and cycling the natural choice for shorter journeys, as well as part of longer journeys. To achieve this, the Council recognises the need for a step change in planning active travel networks and prioritising a programme for infrastructure improvement towards future investment. To clarify, LCWIPs are a non-statutory requirement for local planning authorities, but they are increasingly being used to incorporate emerging best practice in the design of travel networks. So what is the purpose of the LCWIP? The LCWIP offers the Council a chance to strengthen local partnerships with stakeholders who can be influential in identifying and providing infrastructure to enable walking and cycling journeys to be made. The LCWIP also provides an opportunity for the Council to demonstrate its commitment to related policy issues, such as air quality and wider public health benefits. According to the Department for Transport's model, which was the model that was used to carry out this LCWIP, there are 6 main stages in the LCWIP process. The first of which is determining the scope of the LCWIP. And just to clarify, the geographical coverage of the Basildon LCWIP focuses on the 5 key railway stations within the borough. And this boundary was derived to broadly reflect the key transport hubs that we have existing in the borough. Existing walking and cycling routes have also been audited to determine the types of improvement required. And Basildon is currently at stage 5 of the LCWIP process, which seeks to identify where improvements will be made to walking and cycling routes in the future. Officers are therefore seeking for a further consultation before a final iteration of the HELSI report is put forward for approval. In terms of the approval that's being sought for the consultation, this is a non-statutory consultation, which means there's no legal requirement to carry out the consultation. But in order for best practice standards to be upheld, we're proposing this additional consultation. And this will enable wider feedback on the HELSI networks and principle. Essex County Council will be overseeing the consultation alongside other LCWIPs that are being developed across the county. This highlights the strategic nature of the plan with reference to a county scale. And work at a later date will identify how the council will adopt the LCWIP as a planning document. In terms of the next steps, it is anticipated that a final LCWIP report will be brought back to this committee at a later date. And at that time, the classification of the the classification of where the LC route sits in relation to the development plan of the council would have been determined. The committee is therefore being asked to approve the recommendations set out on page 92 of the agenda. At this point, I would like to bring the following update to the attention of members. Enclosure number 2 within the report, which highlights the draft cycle network, has been updated following publication of the agenda. The cycle routes themselves that are highlighted within the report have not been changed. However, more detail has been added in terms of improvements required. So, for example, where toucan crossings might have been suggested previously, consultants are now suggesting for signalized cycle and pedestrian crossings. And this is supposed to reflect the new national cycle infrastructure design guidance. In addition to the revisions proposed to enclosure number 2, a draft walking network plan is also being proposed to be added as a new enclosure number 3. I would just like to take this opportunity to apologize again to members for the late update. We're working to really tight deadlines, and we've just received the detailed report from the consultant today. But I want to assure you that you will have the opportunity to review the report again before it's finalized to approval. On that basis, therefore, for the purposes of clarity and accuracy, an amendment is being proposed to recommendations 1 and 2 as follows. That the committee, 1, notes the Basildon Borough local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, draft cycling and walking networks as set out in enclosure numbers 2 and 3, and 2, that committee approves for the council to be part of the county-wide consultation run by Essex County Council on the routes identified within the draft Basildon Borough local cycling and walking infrastructure plan as set out in enclosure numbers 2 and 3. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take questions now.
Thank you, Ms. Awolola. I think that was a really thorough presentation, and Councillor Turner, I will come to you in just a second. A really thorough presentation, and appreciate the work that you've put into that. I also understand that yourself and other officers took these walking routes around the borough to produce them for us, and thank you for all your work in walking around the borough. I'm sure you got over your 10,000 steps that day and over this period of time. So thanks for the work that you've put into that. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Apologies. I don't know if anybody else had it, but it sounded like you were speaking in a washing machine. So just a matter of clarification. I do apologise. I heard a bit there that you said these routes have been audited, and my understanding is that Essex County Council have come up with these routes, not Basildon. Is that right?
Yep. Adi, if you could address that point.
The routes that were audited are already existing walking and cycling routes, and that was identified by us. So this project has been commissioned by Basildon Council, but we're working in partnership with Essex County Council. So they are already existing routes, they're not new routes.
Yes, understood. The point is, this map very conveniently has the legend right over Wickford, almost like Wickford doesn't exist. And that's why I asked the question, who generated this list of routes? Because, rightly so, rightly or wrongly, I sort of start thinking about cycling routes being that network like you've got in Basildon. And rightly so, I think Basildon deserves that network because of all its links to industry and the residential community. And I think it is really well served there. I think if you look at that, with the routes being proposed, like you say, there's already routes there, but those routes plus the secondary routes, I think that's a really good network to fill up south of the A127 with those links that are needed if we're going to get people out of cars, God forbid, out of cars and onto electric bikes, scooters, pedal bikes, and all that sort of thing. But my concern here is, and likewise, Billericay, I mean, for the town it is, okay, we could argue about that because there are some other routes that we could insist on, but understood where the need's coming from. Incidentally, one route that you might want to consider is the route through from Great Bursted onto the road onto Noak Hill, because that isn't served particularly well there. You sort of have to go back into Billericay. I know nobody's going to do that, but you know, with not too much money, we could have put that road in there, the cycle path in that road, and made it a much better safety and health and safety for the people wanting to do that cycle. But Wickford, it doesn't seem to have anything. Everything in Wickford is coming out of Wickford back into Basildon. And I just wonder why that is. There seems to be an oversight, and I'm dismayed for the people of Wickford, because, you know, there you've got some very almost arterial routes that run through that town. And, you know, although the roads there, you can say, well, okay, you can find your way by bike through those roads. If we're looking at the cycle routes here as a network across Basildon, Wickford is not well provided. And I think that seems to be a glaring omission.
Sorry, just before, thank you, Councillor Ascension, before I invite Ms Lyons and Addy to address the committee. If I could just ask members that aren't speaking, please, if you could turn your microphones on to mute, just because otherwise it means there's some interference going on. Thank you. Ms Lyons?
Yeah, Councillor Tony, you're completely right. But the local cycling and walking improvement plan at the moment deals with what we call superhighways. So it looks at existing routes that run very clearly across the borough, and they all crisscross a lot of the allocations that are going to come forward, and they make their way to train stations, and they make their way to key areas. So that's what the local cycling and walking plan's doing at this level. What then comes once we adopt this document, what then falls from that is what you're saying, and we spoke quite some level. We've spoken to you, haven't we, about the additional work that's needed in the Queen's Park area from additional routes that would improve the safety and crossing to get to schools in that area. So at the moment we're looking at the superhighway route, which is this, and already actually, if you read the report, we've already got funding for improvements to the Nevenden Road section of that through the initial tranche of funding from the Department of Transport Emergency Active Travel Fund. Through the work we've done with Essex County Council and WSP, because this work was well advanced, we got into that funding stream very quickly for that fund. So what doing the LC WIP opens up funding with the DFT for future funding for things like you're talking about, and that is the massive improvement to the Billericay network, which I think is key. I mean, H17 is going to be key to the how Billericay works in terms of getting residents that live out in H17 to Billericay town centre without getting in their cars. So really, this is the beginning of that process, Councillor Turner, and you're quite right. It looks at existing routes and the strong routes that actually link to train stations.
Sorry, Ms Lyons, we've lost you there. Sorry, Ms Lyons, there seems to be an issue with the sound. Ms Awolola, is there anything else that you'd like to add on while we resolve Ms Lyons' sound issues there? Councillor Turner, I'll bring you back in afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
No, nothing at the stage.
Okay.
Councillor Turner?
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification. So this is, I think, picking up on those issues, this is where I come in, and this is what I focused in. Unfortunately, the legend doesn't allow you to, but there's two major highway routes that I would immediately think of in Wickford. One that goes up to Wickford and out the back towards Runwell, which is a rat run that everybody knows, especially those going to Chelmsford, Rettindon and beyond. That one, that to me just seems like it's, as I say, a glaring omission. and the other one is the one that comes, it goes down Queen Elizabeth Way, or Jubilee Way, I think it is, and back out to up Southend Road. Those two particularly serve a hell of a lot of residential communities, and do in fact come into the town in and sort of, if you like, terminate at a railway station. And I think, I mean, I don't want to vote for this tonight on that basis, because I think we're doing Wickford residents a disservice. And those two routes, if nothing else, I think need to go on there.
Thank you, Councillor. So just before I invite Ms. Lyons to come back in there, we're voting tonight on the draft consultation, which would allow member engagement in this process. Yeah. Ms. Lyons.
Exactly. I mean, the routes are not up for discussion tonight. We're looking at voting on what's in front of you, not amending the routes. That is part of the and even the consultation won't look at the routes themselves. Rerouting this is part of a lot of work that's gone into this. It's set criteria, it's set up with the DFT, and it's a set process. The next, which is the cobweb of the superhighways, we dealt with at the next stage, and that's the discussions that Councillor Turner's gone into. Is the next stage. This is superhighway approach. The next stage of drilling down to the next level will be the cobweb approach of actually adding additional routes to the superhighway.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Ms. Awolola, is there anything else you'd like to add before I invite Councillor Moore and then Councillor Rimmer?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just got a couple of questions. What I didn't understand, I suppose, is that we've got a 6-stage process or in this LCWIP project. What I don't understand is why, right at the end of it, stage 5, this is the first time we've heard about it. So why haven't we seen that before, is my first question.
Yep, Ms. Awolola.
Like I pointed out earlier, the LCWIP is a non-statutory document, so the decision to produce the plan wasn't until late last year. I understand it would have been beneficial to have brought this to an earlier committee, and apologies that we didn't do that, but it's a non-statutory requirement, and the key stages that we had earlier on focused on the factual plan, and we told before we finalized the report, we bring it to committee. So in hindsight, maybe we could have brought it earlier on, but again, it's no statutory requirements and there is no legal.
I'll just come in there if that's all right. And I think we're at the stage now where it's right that we consult, but it's also right that it comes back to this committee once we've got the results of that consultation. And there's that clear commitment within the recommendations to be able to do that. I think we can all acknowledge that there has been an increase in cycling going on, and I think it's right that we try and we should do as all we can to make it as safe as possible. Hence this coming before us tonight. Ms. Lyons.
Also, Councillor Moore, it was the LCWIP is built on the cycling plan that was taken forward as part of the emerging local plan. So we've used the information and the evidence basis for that, and that's what's informed the local cycling walking improvement plan. So it's an upgraded version of the cycle plan just dealt with cycling, and the local cycling walking improvement plan deals with walking, and it's got a little plus against it. And the next piece of work we'll be looking at is sustainable transport. So I think you have seen it before in a different guise. So it's basically just a document that's been repurposed to deliver the additional requirements for walking, which then puts us into a different ability for further funding.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. My next question was around the Department of Transport Emergency Active Travel Fund. You've actually got money from the DFT for route number 3, is my understanding. What's happening about the other 12 routes?
The the funding went in for as part of that emergency funding, and that route had already been worked up by WSP and county to a level which we could take it forward for funding. So the same piece of work we done to the rest of the routes to make them available for that funding stream when we get the next round of funding through. So the 7.2 million that Essex got has been divided amongst the Essex authorities, and we'll get our share of it for the Wickford phase, which is really important, and that brings forward some really good improvements around creating quiet emergency areas for schools, and some improvements to a cycleway down Everton Road. Obviously, everything else we'll put forward to future funding rounds, and county are of the opinion that we haven't had any funding previously, so we're now back in the room for funding for cycling and walking.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Is there any further points?
Okay, so it's watch this space, I guess, at the moment. The other point I wanted to just touch on is this consultation. The paper actually says that the consultation is going to be somewhere between December and January. And I certainly don't want a consultation that goes out on the 24th of December. We just won't get the response rate. So can we have a commitment with Essex that we're not going to do a consultation to at least the middle of January?
Having spoken to Essex and WSP, and that's the reason why it's come to committee tonight quite quickly, is the fact that they're looking at an early December date for the consultation to commence. And we already have done levels of consultation with residents in the borough already during March and June this year. So hopefully we'll get some good response to the consultation. So it will be going from sort of mid-December right the way through until mid-January. So it will run over the Christmas period, but there'll be additional time to account for that process.
But you're only talking about 4 weeks, roughly.
I think they're looking at a 6-week process for this. So I think taking account of Christmas, I think they're looking to run to the end of January.
Oh, okay. So that's middle of December to the end of January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further points, Councillor Moore?
Well, just could we have some commitment that we will see that when we get funding, that this comes back to the committee?
Yeah. That's a really good idea, Councillor. Oh, sorry to butt in. Sorry, Councillor. Well, it's really important, I think, especially as we got the first lot of funding through, and I think we're working with councillors in Wickford on that funding at the moment. Anyway, Councillor Buckley and Councillor Jeffreys are working with us on that. So any additional funding we get through the additional tranches, and also any developer funding we get through it, we can also have an item probably once a quarter. Should we get any funding, that we bring that to committee as well.
Thank you. And Councillor Moore, you've preempted a additional recommendation that I might be tempted to propose very soon, which you'll find out about very soon. So, Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation. I would have found, I'm sure other members would have found it easier if there had been a page heading to give an indication of what part of the borough that we were actually in. I had to delve in amongst the text there to find out, oh, this is Nevendon Road. But other pages, it wasn't quite as clear as that. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. Councillor Rimmer, did you want to come in?
Well, I did put my hand up before Councillor Fellows, but I think I noticed that because he made the point I was going to make. I'm struggling as well. And I highlighted the post problem. I don't know if in all good consciousness I can vote for it. Struggling to read it and receiving it, no fault of the council, late today. And these things are not easy to read electronically either. I don't know if there is anything that can be done with the consultation to make everything more legible. And possibly you're able to zoom in, etc., to do so. But yeah, it's really difficult, I'm afraid. And it's a shame because I really care about cycling in this borough. I think we need to actually do something to actually get more people cycling, not just the ones who've taken it up during lockdown and making it safer for them, because we need to think about the longevity of people in this borough, and not just the longevity, but actually that they're leading healthier lives as well. And we know that there's an obesity issue, and this is something that can tackle it. You know, just to quote the great Norman Tebbit, get on your bike.
Just on the point of the consultation, Ms. Awolowo, is there anything that you wanted to add on to that to answer the points raised by Councillor Rimmer and Fellows?
Yes. I'm happy to take the feedback back to the project consultants as well as County Council. Well, just to clarify, one of the reasons why the consultation was originally going to start at the beginning of December, but it's been pushed back to the middle of December just so we can work out how to best consult people given the current restrictions, so to make the consultation more user-friendly. So I will definitely take this feedback back to them so they can consider, if they haven't factored that in already, then I'm sure they'll be looking at it to make the maps more user-friendly.
Thank you, and I can give members my assurance that I'll work with officers in sharing that feedback to ensure that we can engage with the public in the best way possible throughout this consultation, because I think the consultation is absolutely vital. I also think it's vital that the responses back from the consultation and any moves around sustainable transport come back to this committee to be able to look to. So I'm going to propose an additional recommendation. So recommendation number 3, if it's approved, that the committee agrees that further work be carried out on sustainable transport as part of the Basildon Borough LC Whip, and a report will be brought back to the future committee, because I think it's right that we look at cycling and walking and we focus on that and making it healthier and safer for residents, but we also look at sustainable transport as a whole and bring that back to a future committee for members to comment on. So that is my proposal for an additional recommendation. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Fellows. So we'll now proceed to the vote on the additional recommendation being added in. So I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Rimmer?
Sorry, Chair, I did have one more point on the substantive, and
yep.
I just wanted to ask Christine Lyons, Head of Planning, about, and that was just my understanding from previous administration, from sitting on a previous committee, which was Leisure, Culture and Environment, was that there was some DEFRA money that had actually been allocated or received for cycling superhighways, and maybe that funding was never secured. I don't know, but it was just, there hasn't been any sort of acknowledgement of that today. Have I misremembered that, or could I have some clarification?
Yeah, Chair. Councillor Rimmer, that was spent on the, I think it was at the Centenary route. There is a route that goes, goes up from the town centre. That was open, I think, last summer. That route was, they got the DEFRA funding for. So that route has actually been implemented. So again, we have got some money. I think that sort of connects part of the employment area to the town centre and the train station. So that has been implemented as part of that DEFRA funding. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Yes. So, sorry, Chair, I just needed to get that clarified.
So we'll now proceed to the vote on the additional recommendation. So recommendation number 3 that I'll read out again, that the committee agrees that further work be carried out on sustainable transport as part of the Basildon Borough LC Whip, and a report will be brought to a future committee. Are we voting in favour? Councillor Rimmer?
Favour.
Councillor Fellows?
In favour.
Councillor Moore?
In favour.
Councillor Reid?
In favour.
Councillor Turner?
In favour.
Thank you. 6 in favour. That is unanimous. And we'll now vote on the substantive recommendation of all 3 as amended that was set out in the officer's report and an email this evening. So we'll take all 3 recommendations en bloc. I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Rimmer?
Abstain.
Councillor Fellows?
In favour.
Councillor Moore?
In favour.
Councillor Reid?
In favour.
Councillor Turner?
Against.
So with 4 votes in favour, 1 abstention and 1 against, that is carried. Thank you. We'll now proceed on to agenda item number 8, which is the energy and sustainability in planning applications, which is on pages 115 to 120 of your agenda. Mr. Davey is presenting this before us.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can I just check that you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, okay. Excellent, thank you, Chair. So, as members will be aware, the submitted local plan contains a suite of planning policies to ensure that development is sustainable, appropriately located, designed and constructed to high standards. But in light of the delays to the local plan examination, we can't apply full weighting to its policies when planning applications have been determined by our DM colleagues. So the note was produced simply to inform members of a new process which is intended to ensure that much of the existing legislative framework that pertains to carbon dioxide reduction can be taken account of in decision making with the overall benefits this brings. It really expands on paragraph 153 of the NPPF in particular. That's obviously adopted national planning policy, and that requires local planning authorities to expect new development to comply with policies on decentralised energy supply, unless it can be demonstrated by the applicant that it wouldn't be feasible or viable to do so. So the note is not attempting to introduce new policy, but it does seek member agreement with the approach set out in the note, which will very much help our colleagues to take account of the content of the energy and sustainability strategies as part of the planning application decision-making process. And committee is therefore asked to agree with the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davey. Councillor Rimmer.
Yeah, I just need a clarification on this really, because obviously maybe this, I'm sure it's not a declaration of interest. I sit on planning committee, but it's obviously we consult the NPPF all the time. So I'm just wondering what the necessity of this is. If there was an explanatory note for the planning committee on this, or for the SPI on this, does it need to be voted on if it's already in the NPPF that we consult on? So just a clarification of why this is necessary would be great.
I think really, sorry, Chair, was something you were going to add there? Okay. Yeah, I think in short, it's a case of taking stock of where we are with everything. So the NPPF was revised last year, as you'll be aware. There's obviously there's a town centre regeneration strategy that was approved at the revival committee of the 9th of September. But I think quite critically, what we're now seeing is those large applications coming forward. So the concern is, of course, that we with the delays to the EIP, we need to make sure that we are actually we are getting the necessary reductions in place. So we aren't, for that reason, we're simply using existing national guidance, and when those applications come in now, we're able to we have a vehicle to ensure that we do get the necessary reductions. When the local plan is adopted, of course, then full weighting can be applied to all of the policies within that. But we need to do something now as well.
Thank you, Mr. Davey. Ms. Lyons, was there anything that you wanted to add in?
Basically, and I think both Councillor Rimmer and Councillor Turner do sit on planning committee, and when we asked for energy strategies, what I was getting a bit concerned about as head of planning and discussions with DM, the manager of DM, was the fact that we had no way of assessing the strategies. So what we're trying to do in this report is set out a way of which we will assess those strategies as a council going forward until the local plan's adopted or until we get any further changes from central government. So it provides a very clear way of what we expect developers to deliver for us, and also how we measure it, because we had no way of measuring it. So it's like we were brought to planning committee about a year ago, was how we're going to adopt master plans. So it's basically just a way of, it's just how we're going to do it through the process. So it's setting out so DM officers know what to expect a strategy to look like. We know how to discharge that condition, and members of the planning committee, when we take this back to planning committee following hopefully adoption to the agreement tonight, will know what to expect when we have an energy strategy that's set out in a planning application. So it's weights and measures, really, Councillor Rimmer.
Councillor Turner.
Yeah, I understand the principles, but I don't understand the specifics. So, I mean, in principle, it's good that we should do this because everybody's looking for sustainability, and hopefully everybody's trying to think how to use world's resources less. So I understand that, and that's got to be a good thing. But trying to get my head around exactly what that looks like, I can't do it from the report. You mentioned a couple of things there that you sort of threw in by way of the MPPF, but it would have been good to have some idea of what we're proposing here, because like all these things, the devil is in the detail. And if it's already coming through in the local plan and the MPPF and all that, then it's pretty much out of our hands in that respect, because that vehicle's already running. But this one, we're asking to pull it forward early, which I have a mind to do. But it would have been nice to have been given some specifics, some physicals about this is what we're talking about, councillors, because we're all going to walk away from here probably having approved it. Another rubber stamp exercise, in as much as we'll walk away saying it's a good thing, and somebody says, well, what does it actually mean? And we're all going to say, I haven't got the foggiest. So I don't know if you can give us a flavour as to what we're voting for here. That would be good.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Mr. Davey.
Okay. As Christine just said, it's something that well, we need to be able to take account of the energy and sustainability strategies coming forward. The large schemes coming forward in the town centre will require all sorts of site-specific studies and surveys to be provided. So again, there are three options down as a recommendation. You don't have to agree with the recommendation if you don't want to, councillor. You can alternatively choose to suggest an amendment, which we can then consider, and we can bring something back at a later point in time. But this is just really trying to elaborate on national guidance and just ensure that we actually get greater detail for these large schemes that are already at planning application stage, and with all subsequent pre-apps.
Thank you, Mr. Davey. And can I'll just invite Ms. Lyons in, and then I'll ask my question that's linked to that shortly.
Councillor Turner, it's very much like how we deal with contamination. Contamination was previously not dealt with very well through the planning process, and through use of conditions and strategies, we can now deal with contamination properly. And what this sets out is the fact that, and we've worked very closely with Paul Brace's team, the climate change people on this. So we haven't gone rogue. This is tied together with the climate change that the council's now got as a clear policy, which I think is really important for us. What it takes that the regulation requirement to reduce CO2 emissions. The policy that we've got in our plan and the policies that set out in the MPPF sets out a requirement to hit a target. And what we were concerned about is how we were going to measure how they're going to hit that target. So in providing the information that we've set out here, the 7 steps, it sort of requires them to deliver that information to us so we can make that assessment. And at the end, they have to then conclude with a summarising report to say how they hit those targets. And it's very difficult because we're not experts in this field, and planners shouldn't be experts in all fields. So it's trying to bring back to the planning process a way of making that assessment by using a clear bit of guidance, which we've got in front of us, which is these 7 steps to get to that situation. Very much like how we deal with contamination now, which is sort of in the same area as this now. So I understand what you're saying is that you needed a bit more clarity on what they were doing, but the 7 steps here sort of set that out. About we have to demonstrate how landform, land layout, building orientation, massing, and landscaping will design to minimise energy demand on heating and cooling and power. I mean, that is quite that's an easy definable thing they have to deliver. So that each one of these items is quite easy definable in terms of what we're asking both you to agree and us to put in front of developers.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Councillor Moore.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Turner, did you want to come back in?
Answered.
No, just thanks for the clarification. I think we'll probably pick it up maybe when we see the first application, because I think this is going to need some more work done behind the scenes, some more homework, I guess.
And the point that I was going to make on linked to your earlier question, Councillor Turner, is that this is going to be assessed on an application by application basis along that criteria that's set out.
Could I just go back on a point that Councillor Turner made, which I think is quite key, and as Councillor Turner and Councillor Rimmer both want to sit on planning, is that actually this should be brought to planning committee as well then. So we do we look at bringing not a full report like this, but a report that looks at the strategy about how we're going to be looking at that through the planning applications. So maybe January we bring a report to planning committee as part of the recommendation process.
That
may then give you the skin, you've got the bones here, we then fill the bones out with the information that you want to see how those 7 issues are then dealt with through a planning application.
That would be useful, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms Lyons. Councillor Moore.
No, it's okay, it's been answered.
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer.
Yes, thank you. That sounds like a worthy recommendation, actually, to go take this to planning committee. I don't know whether this would also be in the mix. I'm just wondering, obviously you've just said that planning officers aren't experts in this particular field. So I don't know if there's even more detail needed in terms of the types of alternatives that are available. So, in terms of what does it mean if hydrogen fuel is actually used instead of gas, and the sort of mix, if there's a hybrid option in terms of heating between gas and hydrogen, for instance, and just those sort of questions as well.
We're very lucky that there is a climate change officer now embedded in the council who has that knowledge. So I haven't got to rely on the officers having that knowledge, but it's a way of actually getting information in for the officers then to put in front of the climate change officer to make those assessments.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to vote on the recommendation on page 116, and if members are in agreement, I will agree on the final wording after this meeting around the review at planning committee of the principles. I'll work with office to find some suitable wording on that principle, but I think everyone's in broad agreement that that be reviewed by the planning committee. So we'll vote on the recommendation that the committee agreed to the new process, which will help to take account of the council's energy and sustainability strategies in the determination of planning applications, and suitable recommendation around this being reviewed also by the planning committee. So I will be voting in favour. Councillor Rimmer?
In favour.
Councillor Fellows?
In favour.
Councillor Turner?
In favour.
Councillor Reid?
In favour.
Councillor Moore?
In favour.
Thank you. Kelly, I know I've put in an additional point on the recommendation. I presume we've carried that as a whole.
Yes, it can be carried as a whole. Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll now go back to the work programme update on pages 11 to 13 of your agenda. The work programme is laid out on page 12. So in line with the reports that have been and the recommendations that have been approved on the education update and the sustainable transport, I'd like to add on those 2 items onto the work programme so that the review and of the consultation and the stakeholder engagement can come back to this committee for review. Is there any other member that wishes to comment on the work programme? Yeah, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just a comment really. Looking at the work programme, does that mean we're not meeting as a committee until March?
We've got a meeting on the 19th of January, but so far we've got some outstanding items that are to be confirmed, and they could be ready by then to be brought to the committee in January.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons.
Okay.
There was additional work item that we wanted to bring forward. At the parish council liaison meeting on Tuesday this week, there was an issue raised in connection with the neighbourhood plan budget, which we've been put in the council's budget for neighbourhood plans going forward, what was raised by a number of parish councillors and also parish councillor stroke borough councillor sergeant was the fact that there was no criteria for how we dealt with the £50,000 in that budget. So what we need to bring forward in January will be a report that sets out the neighbourhood plan budget, which is a part of the council's budget, and how that will be spent by the neighbourhood plans. So what criteria they need to come forward with, because at the moment there isn't a criteria, so it hasn't been spent. And we've got a number of neighbourhood plans that are undergoing at the moment in Borough, Gifford and North Benfleet, Ramsden Bell House, Hopeless and Honolly, and also the beginnings of a neighbourhood plan in Oakbridge.
Thank you, Ms.
So that
Lyons.
needs to go to January committee.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that update from the meetings that you've had there. I think that's right, that we are providing support to local parish councils in development of those neighbourhood plans, and I think it's right that we set some criteria as well around that. So I fully endorse that coming on to the work programme. Councillor Rimmer.
Yeah, it was just a comment. £50,000 does seem a little small for the amount of neighbourhood plans we're talking about. And also, if we're thinking about the soundness of the local plan as a whole, where neighbourhood plans are included in the local plan, I just wonder if there's any scope for revising that figure.
There is a significant amount of money that the neighbourhood plan groups themselves can claim from national government. And they are on a yearly basis. So this was a top-up fund that the leader, following some comment from Bowers Gifford, made available for all the neighbourhood plans. I suppose as part of that report, we could bring an update report to the committee. So we could do two reports, an update report on where the neighbourhood plans all are, and then a report that deals with the criteria and how you want that budget spent. That might be, at least officers or members will be aware of where the neighbourhood plans are.
Thank you. Yep, fully support that coming on to the work programme and an update for members there. I think that'd be really useful. Any other members wishing to comment on the work programme? Councillor Turner.
There's been some discussion about what Councillor Callaghan calls a congestion charge and what Councillor Finch calls a clean air charge. You know, we know that there's no such thing as a congestion charge for the A127. That's just your political gambit.
Councillor Turner, we're discussing items on the work programme.
I'm coming to it. Okay. What would be good, so we can have some transparency around this and some scrutiny again, is a report from the officers that clears this mess up. You know, we keep getting it played on social media, but what we don't do is we don't review it as a council. So I would like at the next meeting an officer report on exactly what it is and what it isn't and where we are with it, because quite frankly, it's a mess.
I don't think that falls under us. That would be because that's the work that Paul Brace's team's doing, and I don't think it would come under our remit as a planning policy team.
I think it will.
Councillor Turner, just pause for a moment. The previous report on the proposals for the clean air charging zone went to Policy and Resources, and that was debated at the Policy and Resources Committee. Karina, I don't know if you can shed any more.
Yeah, if I can just let members know, there will be an update report to full council on the 10th of December. I don't know the details of it, but I know there's been a report being requested on air quality. So hopefully the answers will be in that report. But it does actually fall under the Environment Committee. Policy and Resources, I think, dealt with it following a motion to full council back last year, I believe it was. So it's kind of gone between committees, but there will be an update to full council on the 10th of December.
Well, Chair, let me just tell you, this committee is planning infrastructure. If that is brought in, there's an impact on both of those. Yeah, so I know it falls between committees, but it's only fair that this committee gets an update on where we are with the whole issue around that. Now, it's quite likely that will go to Policy and Resources, but it doesn't mean to say it can't come here. And I would propose that goes on the work plan. and I'm sure one of my colleagues will second it.
Councillor Turner, as we've already heard, an update's going to full council, and if you feel after the meeting at full council that an update needs to come forward to this committee, then we'll happily take on that request. But the remit, as we've heard from officers, does belong elsewhere.
Well, Chair, I've got a proposal. There's a proposal. Can I have a seconder? Thank you.
Okay, so we will take the items separately to go on to the work programme. So we have updates. Councillor Rimmer?
Sorry, apart from that, which obviously we're going to vote on in a minute, but in respect of the sustainable transport, you said that was coming back at some point as well, but in the granular of that, I just want to, are we covering rail transport as part of that sustainable transport?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. It's just, I think what's become clear, and I don't know if the report can reflect this concern, it feels like Pitsy in particular has been dropped off certain timetabled routes, especially around rush hours. And it's a concern, especially as now we're going to also be taking on more housing for Pitsy and Bowers Gifford, and whether actually that this is properly being factored in, because I feel that the rail company would rather service Barking most of the time and get the profit from servicing London Underground route and servicing Pitsy.
I can give you that assurance that we'll be looking at rail transport as well. So in terms of additional items on the work programme, so I've put forward a few which we'll vote on, and then we'll vote on Councillor Turner's proposal separate to that. So I'm proposing that we have an update on the neighbourhood plans and a separate update on the criteria for those neighbourhood plans being reported on, and then an update following the consultation around education, and an update following the consultation on the cycling and sustainable transport plan. So that's my proposal.
Sorry, can I? Apologies, Chair. Thank you for indulging me. But when we do that, are we going to be able to hear from the parish councils and neighbourhood planning authorities as well, if they would like to speak, just to give them that opportunity to speak to that item if they wish to do so?
If you could leave that with me to discuss with officers following this meeting. I'll look into that following this meeting, Councillor Rimmer. You have my assurance on that.
Thank you.
So do I have a seconder for the proposals that I'm adding onto the work programme? Councillor Rimmer. I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Rimmer?
In favour.
Councillor Fellows?
In favour.
Councillor Moore?
In favour.
Councillor Reid?
In favour.
Councillor Turner?
In favour.
So that is carried. We'll then vote separately. Just like to seek clarification from you, Councillor Turner, that if you're asking for an update on the proposal around clean air charging zone, if it's decided that that sits with another committee, are you comfortable with that?
No, Chair. The point is that there's been far too much politics on this, and we need to clear the air. The fact is that if these proposals that have been muted, if they come in, do have a strategic bearing on what we're trying to do. That's why, yes, I can understand it going to the Environment Committee, but I can also appreciate that it should come here, and we should come here to not only understand what the issues are between the so-called congestion charge and what is likely to be a clean air charge, and then perhaps look, with the officers' help, at what the impact that would have on our infrastructure and strategic planning. And that's why I think it's critical. Now, I can accept that it will go to full council, but it won't come to full council in those terms. And that's why I think it is very relevant that we get ahead of the game and just have a look at what the impact of that would be on Basildon Borough, not just the A127, but around town, because you can imagine that if that's brought in, traffic will want to go elsewhere. And what does that do? What does that put on what strain does that put on the infrastructure in the borough?
Ms. Lyons?
Councillor, I sort of get where you're coming from, and what it's basically, I mean, I see it, and we are looking at this. And we've already looked at this already. It's the impact of air quality on our ability to deliver our local plan and our future growth. Right. That's where we could discuss that as part of this. I need to go talk to the policy team about what we can do in terms of that piece of work. So could I suggest that I talk to my policy team, because I can see the policy manager, Philip Barlow, the strategy manager and prevention manager, might want to talk to me about it. Can I leave the fact that we look at what we can do for you following the report that's going to council already, and then we come back with you with an option of what we can report back to you on in terms of how we can use the contents of the report that's going forward and the work we've already done on our allocations and our growth, and look at what the impact of air quality is on the potential growth impacts of the borough going forward. Well, that would fit the remit of our ability in this. I think that would be, but I need to look at how we put that together.
Okay, that I think is part of it. But the other thing I think we need to do, and probably with Essex's help, is look at what it would do if that charge was brought in, because sure enough, the traffic is not going to stop. And yeah, okay, so what they're going to do is they're going to find other rat runs around the town. So that's why it can only really come here. It can't go to environment. It's got to come to strategic planning. It has, if you like, an impact on the strategy, the spatial strategy, not only for Basildon, but also for Essex, because a lot of that traffic may not originate in Basildon. That's why I think it's good to have not only what that is, but what's the difference between a so-called congestion charge and a clean air charge, and then let's look at all the implications, because it could be fairly dramatic if it's real.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. And just in line with what Ms. Lyons has suggested, I think a broad update on air quality as a whole, I think is certainly within the remit of this committee to be able to look at.
It's not going to cut it, Chair.
And pick up the points that you've raised. But it also responds to the update we've got a full council as well. Sorry, Ms. Lyons.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, my position is that what I would suggest is the fact that we agree that there's another item added to the work programme. The complete agreement of what that is will be agreed between yourself, Councillor Fellows, in consultation with Councillor Turner. But I need to talk to my policy team first, because I need to know what information we've got and how much, I need to be able to know what we're going to report back to you on and get it right. And it might be something that actually there's a report done by Paul Brace's team that we then look at as part of our planning process and have that process into our policy. So actually it might be a sort of like a bit of a sort of a dual report. So I can't give you a title or an area yet, but can we just agree that there's going to be an item maybe in the early part of next year looking at air quality, and we can determine what that is from further discussions away from tonight.
You go away and see what you can do.
Yeah.
But I would like, for one, to know, a congestion charge is different to a clean air charge.
Yep.
Somebody is lying. And
if we could avoid that language, and if we could just keep it onto the work programme and the items focused on the work programme.
Well, Chairman, you can say that, but we need the scrutiny around the process. But whatever it turns out to be, one or t'other, we need to understand what the implications are for this borough. And at the moment, we don't. What we do is we kick it around like a political football without really knowing what the outcome is. Now, if it does hit one way or another, there's going to be outcomes. There's going to be an impact. And as I say, it won't just be through traffic movements that originate in Basildon Borough. It will originate Southend, in Thurrock. It will be London coming down. What has anybody actually given it a thought past the politics as to what that is going to do for us? Because I think it could be quite scary.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Your points on wanting a report around air quality and wanting an understanding of the impact, I think, are quite valid, and certainly within the remit of this committee to look at. And I'd be happy to bring forward a report and work with officers to determine the a report around air quality, if you're minded to agree on that.
You know what I would like? I would like the impact. If you're just going to bring around a thing that says we've got dirty air in these areas, it's not going to do it, Chairman.
That's not what Ms Lyons is suggesting.
I would happy to leave it to Ms Lyons to come up with a proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer.
Yes, it's just Ms Lyons was saying that it'd be yourself and Chair and Councillor Fellows consulting with Councillor Turner, but just as the seconder of the motion, I'd like to be consulted, and I suspect my fellow councillor, Councillor Moore, as our lead, would like to be consulted too.
I think if we could agree on the floor, I think that's more appropriate. So it's not a specific item that we're able to give a specific title to this evening, but I think everyone is in broad understanding of the determination of what that will.
Okay.
So I will happily vote in favour. Councillor Rimmer.
In favour.
Councillor Fellows.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Moore.
In favour.
Councillor Reid.
In favour.
Councillor Turner.
I'm against. I mean, no, I'm in favour.
I could just say I'll take your first vote.
So, Chair, I was just going to clarify, are we adding another report, agreeing to Councillor Turner's proposal for another report on air quality to be looked by officers and see what they can bring to the committee? Is that what we're voting on?
Yeah. I can't give it a specific title right now, but the remit will work on ahead of a future committee meeting. So we're now asked to, the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee is invited to consider and endorse the work programme as set out within the report. So I'll be voting in favour. Councillor Rimmer.
In favour.
Councillor Fellows.
In favour.
Councillor Moore.
In favour.
Councillor Reid.
In favour.
Councillor Turner.
In favour.
Thank you, members. That concludes our meeting this evening. So thank you all for your attendance and your contributions. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks, bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bye.